Hello. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at things as quickly as I can. This is important. This is related to a lot of the current crises that we're experiencing in the world right now. A lot of people in lockdown. And what's going to happen? Where are we going? Where is this headed? Is this all going to turn around at some point? The government's going to relinquish their newly acquired powers and just let everything return to normal as soon as this virus is under control? Or is this all part of a process or plan that's unfolding? And what I'm going to, a plan that's going to get worse, and a process that's going to get worse. Is that what it is? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a look at iPetGoat 2. I have a lot of new things to say about iPetGoat 2 that are, I think, valuable, that are important. And then I'm going to make applications to some other issues, other pieces. For example, Operation Blackjack, Leonard Cohen's song that he called a terrorist song, First We Take Manhattan, The Simpsons, and a few things like that. But I'm not going crazy. I'm not going to be going out here and saying this date or that date, these things will happen. I will have dates and time frames that are important, I believe, to the occult elite that are creating these sorts of videos, and I don't know what you want to call it, predictive programming, but it's not really predictive programming in these cases, I don't think. It's more like communications, where they're communicating something. But I'll explain that as we go. Some of it's ritual magic. You see some of that in iPetGoat 2 as well, which I don't believe in any of that sort of thing, but that's how they view it. Now, and then I'll also make an application with scripture at the end. So we'll put a lot together here, and I assure you, if you watch the video to the end, I believe that one step after another, you're going to be very shocked at what there is to find that we haven't seen yet, but we're seeing now. Okay, so taking a look at this, we'll begin with iPetGoat 2. You'll see the opening scene of iPetGoat 2. That's what this screenshot is of. Situates the events of iPetGoat 2 as events that come after people are in lockdown already. You have ashes falling from bodies being burned in the background, and it's within this context that we see what's going on. This isn't just the end of what happens. This seems to be sort of at the beginning, right? So that's an interesting observation, especially with the coronavirus issue right now. People are already in lockdown. It's like they're being put away in preparation for something. Now, a little bit about iPetGoat 2. This is a video produced by a company, or Heliofont, about, I forgot what year, 2011 or so. I started following this at the very beginning. I created videos at the time, received a threatening message anonymously about this stuff, and I just deleted them. So now I think it's later on, and I'm not going to go crazy here. I'm just going to explain stuff. I've learned a lot. I'm going to say that now from other people over time. One person more recently that I've watched quite a bit, I don't always agree with, and I think sometimes he goes overboard trying to get dates and everything, but it's J.K. Bugout. He has got some really interesting observations that I relied on for some things here. But I'm going to improve and correct them in some ways as well. Now, and I hope that we can benefit each other in the conversations. But what I've got here is, or what we have here with iPetGoat 2 is a video about a second false flag attack like the first one on 9/11, when George Bush was in a classroom reading The Pet Goat, book to these children. Okay, and you see the video starts with Bush in a classroom setting with some false flag attack markers on this map, BP oil spill, you've got the Oklahoma City bombings, 9/11, and you have lots of symbolism in here. I'm not going to explain this right now. This isn't the point. I'm just highlighting a few things to remind people what this is, and if you've not watched the video before, you should watch it. But these are the sorts of things you'll see. You see that the United States is divided. You'll see that you have the doomsday clock at midnight. You have a water event. Look, the fence is going into the water directly. That means that this water line was not there originally. That fence should be on land. And as you'll see, if you watch the video, there's even a person stranded on a little island out there who jumps in. You have these Twin Tower representations being destroyed. That's the first false flag, 9/11. And Bush, when he's in the classroom, says, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice." And the idea is shame on me. And so if you fall for it the second time, you're really it's your own fault. We have war. We have a false Christ type figure who has to bring about his new world order, his way of doing things through destruction and catastrophe. He keeps his eyes closed throughout the whole video wearing a crown of thorns, and he's brought into the world. So this is his passion, his suffering, and at the end you see his crown of thorns starts to disappear as his eyes opened, and the church starts to crumble behind him with his back to the church. So this is a process of eliminating Christianity, eliminating the church, in order to bring about a new world order that brings out of the shadows this shadow government, these powerful people who are in the occult. Okay, now what I'm going to look at is especially this classroom scene. Okay, and some of this I don't know if he figured out himself or if he got it from somewhere else, but J.K. Bugout observed that these heads, children, you have 12 heads here, that these are 12 months. This is a calendar, and it's easy to see that it's a calendar when we look at 2017 as our model. This is 2017, and this video was made well before 2017, so this is an interesting observation. You have 2017, the lunar calendar has two sixth months. Those 6 months correspond to July and August, the 7th and 8th Gregorian calendar month. Okay, so if you go through here, and you'll notice the first lunar month really overlaps almost entirely with February. It starts here on January 28th and goes through the month of February, and ends the next month actually begins on the first. No, I'm sorry. At the end on the 26th of February. So from the 28th of January through the 26th of February or 25th of February is the first month. So almost exclusively February. So if we start the first lunar month here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and so here you have your 6th and second 6th lunar month, and you have that as your calendar months, Gregorian calendar months, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 8. So it maps, it's perfect. You also have, if you look carefully here, you have an eclipse on the 8th Gregorian month, okay, in 2017. That was the date, that was the Great American Eclipse, that eclipse that crossed the United States, the total solar eclipse. That was August 21st, 2017, so that would be in the latter half or towards the end of this month of August, which is exactly where we have the eclipse. In addition to that, she is situated in the front row between the 9th and before the 10th, after the 9th, towards the end of the 9th, and before the 10th month, Gregorian. In other words, in September, she is what? She is a woman, a virgin, clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, ready to give birth. This is going to fall out like a birth. Okay, this is the September 23rd, 2017 alignment that everybody made such a big deal about. Again, I'm not into this sort of thing, but the people who created the video apparently were, and they were aware of it. And so you have Virgo with Jupiter, like an apple red, the red planet, being birthed with the moon under her feet, and the sun, clothed in the sun, and so on, okay? So this is the alignment that took place in in September of the year 2017, and that's where she is. So this is clearly 2017. Everything maps up. It's a lunar, how do I call it? It's like a lunar leap year, so they have 2 6th months, and those months are merged. They happen to be the 7th and 8th Gregorian calendar months. Matches perfectly. We have the eclipse and we have the the alignment, all in perfect order. And so this is very clearly the 2017 calendar. Now, in 2017, stuff happened right after this eclipse. We had these hurricanes apparently that were even named in the video if you look closely, and that's interesting. Now, what do we have? What do I have to say about this now? I want to observe that this is not just 2017. I want to show that this is also 2020. Okay? They're going to have 2020. You're going to have to set aside the merged heads, but this is going to be pretty clear in a second. In this video, eclipses play a very major role. Okay? You see this eclipse here. You see, if you look closely on the cheeks of people, they have eclipses. They have these eclipses. And if you look closely here, she, as a female, is the moon is represented in the occult traditionally as a feminine principle. Okay, she is like the moon, eclipsing the sun with this little dot to the side. But notice the type of eclipse that she is representing here. There are two different kinds of solar eclipse, full solar eclipse. You have the total eclipse, and we have an annular eclipse. The total eclipse is when the moon is closer to the earth, so it actually obstructs the entire sun, and you only see the corona around it, the corona being the outer atmosphere of the sun. An annular eclipse, like this one on the left, notice that we don't see very well, if at all, the corona, that's this outer atmosphere. What we see is a ring of fire. That's because the moon is further away from the earth in its elliptical orbit and doesn't totally block the sun. It only blocks a part of it, but it fits inside it. Okay, so it's an annular eclipse. In IPET-GOAT 2, the eclipse, I just want to make a historical observation. The eclipse of August 21st, 2017, that was a total eclipse, like this. But the eclipse that's featured throughout IPET-GOAT 2 is an eclipse that is annular. That's the main one. That's the one the whole video seems to be revolving around, an annular eclipse. It's a ring of fire eclipse. So if you look throughout the video, you will see, for instance, in heliophones in the name, that's not a corona. That is the ring of fire. Okay, that's an annular eclipse. And just to show that it's not a stretch to say that she represented the alignment in September of 2017, and now she represents a solar eclipse in 2019. And notice that she has this dot here in the heliophote. The dot comes to the side. On the eclipse on Obama's face, there's a mole that represents this dot to the side. This is how the video represents the solar eclipse frequently. And I have a theory about what that dot is, and I'll explain that in a second, but I'm not sure of it. But what we have here is some evidence that this is the solar eclipse that's being represented here, as well as the alignment in 2017. So it's the solar eclipse in 2019 and an alignment in 2020 and alignment in 2017. I hope I haven't been saying 2019. If I have, I mean 2020. So we're looking at 2017 and 2020. Okay, so she is going to represent an eclipse in 2020. I'll explain that, which one. But it's an annular eclipse. Throughout the video, we have annular eclipses. Here's your annular eclipse. Notice it's a ring of fire. Here in this scene, the moon is too small to eclipse totally the sun. It will fit inside it. That's an annular eclipse at the moment that we're seeing this bin Laden figure invoking, making an invocation to have success in his terrorist attacks or whatever. Here we have a feminine principle in front of the solar principle in eclipse, but it's annular. Here, when the war starts, look, notice that the bright sun behind it is being eclipsed by a smaller moon that will leave a ring of fire when it hits when it enters the sun. It's not going to totality in the sense of total eclipse. It's going to be an annular eclipse. Okay? These are all annular eclipses when the war starts, when we have nuclear war, when we have war, when we have him making his invocation. That's an annular eclipse. That's a ring of fire. That's what this video is primarily about. Now, that's important. So what we look at here in this calendar, when we look at it as 2020, notice that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heads to the left. We're going to change how we count the months. Sounds like a stretch maybe. It's not. I'll show you. But instead of going back row, front row, like we did for 2017, we're going to say 6 and 6. We're going to have her in the 6th month. And so she's after 6 months starts, before the 7th. She is in the 6th month. And we are looking at the 6th month of 2020 when we have a annular solar eclipse. And let's take a look at this. This is a very important solar eclipse. This is a solar eclipse that happens on the solstice, June 21st, 2020. An annular solar eclipse will occur exactly where she is situated. Notice, okay, in the middle of the months of the year. And I'll show in a little bit, but see here, this rabbit, we have a buck over here, and people have missed the point, I think. I've not heard anybody say this, but this buck signals to us that this rabbit is a male. Male rabbits are bucks, okay? The first full moon after the June eclipse in 2020, June 21st eclipse, solstice eclipse, is a buck full moon on July 5th. Let me find that. I have a slide for that somewhere. Here. And notice when the room goes dark, it's here, down here, July 5th, 12:44 a.m., full buck moon. Other moons are not, full moons are not called the buck moon. They're the strawberry moon, the sturgeon moon, the corn moon. July 5th, the first one after this, right over here, is a buck moon. And that's why we have a buck illuminated like the moon, a lesser light. Okay? And it's angry. Now I'll come back to the importance of the buck moon here. But this is 2020. That's the June 26th annual, or June 21st annular eclipse. That is the buck moon on July 5th. Now, we go back here. So I think that's enough to establish that we have the 2020 calendar here. Now I want to show you that these June 21st eclipses are not common, okay? But they're important. Look at when we had one. June 21st of 2001. That's the year of the first 9/11. So we had 9/11 happen just a few months after the June 21st, 2001 eclipse. Now, this is the next June 21st solstice eclipse. And it's June 21st, 2020. There are none between it. There was one in 1982, and there will be one in 2039. And as far as I remember when I looked, those are the only ones in the last century and a half or 2 centuries. So from 1900 on, these are them. You can double check that, but these are rare. This is an annular, as I've already said. Notice that this is a span of from 1982 to 2001, 19 years exactly. From 2001 to 2020, 19 years. And from 2020 to 2039, 19 years. We have 3 19s. 19, 19, 19-year gaps. Okay. So yeah, 19, 19, 19. All right. But it's important because this is the second 9/11, and the other one happened after the summer solstice eclipse, and this is the next one of those. Now, I'm going to keep going. So for an IPEC Goat 2, a second false flag like that one, it would make sense they would correspond to another solstice eclipse like this. Now, I want to mention something that's important here. Notice the first one didn't happen on the date. The date, I believe, was important to them. The solstice eclipse in 2001 was important to them, but it wasn't tied down to the moment. You didn't have to have some sort of nuclear attack during the eclipse or on that same date or anything like that. Okay, and similarly, I think trying to pinpoint a date this year for these things, whatever's going to happen, is definitely a stretch. I mean, maybe it can happen. I don't know. I'm not going to guess. I don't think they work like that. But I do think that we have. I don't think they necessarily work that way. But I do think we have some pretty solid evidence from this calendar and the events in this video that something is in the works here. I don't know. This may be one of their big long-term plans. I mean, look at that. They went from 2001 to 2020 as part of their plan. Are they going to go all the way to 2039? Is this going to be long and stretched out, and we're just going to get impatient and be like, well, it didn't happen on a date we picked? I don't know. I don't know how fast everything's going to unfold. But this year, things are unfolding rather quickly so far. We're definitely in the timeline of this video, and we're definitely approaching what I think is their central eclipse in the video. And that's this year, June 21st, I believe, the annular eclipse. Okay, followed by buck moon. Now, let's go ahead and look at the importance of this eclipse in other sources, not just IPEC Goat 2. So let's take a look here at The Simpsons. There was an episode, I think it's season 20, episode 13. So here in this episode, this one, you have the eclipse notice this is the eclipse that crosses the United States. This is the eclipse of August 21st, 2017. This episode was published, I think, in 2009 or 10, somewhere around there. The eclipse, they even show the eclipse. The eclipse crosses from here down to, crosses the United States, following the path of the 2017 eclipse. It is a total eclipse. They make a point to say that. Let me go ahead and just show you here. So this is the August 21st eclipse. Notice the path, northwest to southeast. Now we go back down here, and we see the eclipse is starting in the northwest, and in Simpsons it goes across. So this is the August 21st, 2017 eclipse. They're watching the eclipse in the United States in Springfield as it crosses. Okay, and what this does, what's interesting is after this eclipse, all sorts of things start to happen. Basically, the gears go. But Lisa goes out and she ends up having to solve riddles and things in this episode. Sort of interesting. And the first riddle that she solves, well, one of the first riddles that she solves, is up here. After the eclipse, they've lost Maggie, and you have in the top with this Lisa in her nun outfit, it says, "Turn around, seek Springfield's biggest man-made ring." She's going to have to hunt for a ring. Now, an annular eclipse is a ring eclipse. I'm observing that. Okay? And this riddle in this episode, these riddles are never fully resolved, especially this anagram at the end. But I'll get to that in a second. Okay? But she's looking for a ring, and she doesn't know which ring it is. And she even says, big ring, so many rings, but which one is the key to finding the gem? Because she's looking for a gem. And she speculates that it's the ring, the biggest ring in Springfield is the ring of their bell in the bell tower up here. Okay. It's interesting. We've got to the side of it the moon. I wonder if that's a hint. But she sees this ring. She thinks of this ring, the ring sound. She goes up there, and when she's up there, she encounters her principal and somebody else who say they're part of an ancient order. And they say that Freemasons searched for the gem in the past, and legend says the gem will be revealed. Listen carefully. Legend says the gem will be revealed during the first full moon after a solar eclipse. And then they said she's wrong to think it was the bell. The ring was actually, in the riddle, supposed to be the ring in Springfield here. But when she goes up there and they look at the ring, written on it are some words. And it's an anagram that she speculates it's an anagram. It says, "Great crimes kill holy sage." And the Simpson creators, before a commercial break, put this. Can you try and figure out the answer? We can't. Great crimes kill holy sage. Now, I don't know. Maybe they're not even giving a real anagram. Okay, she's trying to solve an anagram. She speculates that's what it is, and she tries to solve it and ends up being sort of absurd. But the creators say they can't solve it. Maybe it's not an anagram at all. Maybe what they're saying is when that moon comes around, great crimes will kill the holy sage. That's the people of God, right? Christ and those who are in Christ. I'm not sure. But what we're looking at here is the total eclipse of August 21st, some sort of occult stuff happening, a search for a ring that reveals things, and the ring, I think, is almost certainly the annular eclipse, and a statement that the gem will be revealed during the first full moon after a solar eclipse. Okay, so we're looking at a window here from June 21st to July 5th. That's really interesting because that's your solar eclipse. That's the center of IPEC 02. I think it's the ring eclipse, probably hinted at here in The Simpsons. And we have the moon, first full moon after, being the buck moon, which is also represented in IPEC 02. And I suspect, just drop something, and I suspect that the importance of that moon gives us some reason to think that that second dot that shows up, for example, in heliophones at the end, it says heliofont. You see the solar eclipse, the ring, a fire eclipse, and the letter O. And then after that, you see the dot from the eye move over and take prominence, take this sort of center stage. I don't think that's an alignment during the eclipse. I don't think. Maybe you can find something about that I can't. But I suspect that this is a sequence. I think that's going to be the full moon after the solar eclipse. You have the solar eclipse, then the full moon. So I think these two things are probably important, but I could be totally wrong on that. That dot is tricky, and I'd like to know more about it. I'm for those of you who are confused about what I'm talking about this dot. Right? After the eclipse is featured, the dot goes and moves over to here. This is the dot on the eye, and takes that dot to the side of the eclipse position that we see on the floor with the girl and that we see on Obama's face. Okay, so now what happens? So here we get this anagram, crimes kill the holy sage. Lisa thinks it says, regally the rock gem is Lisa. Which, a nun later says, who starts a sentence with regally and gets rid of it? And then the nun writes, it's really Maggie, Sherlock, which of course is not what it's going to be. Both of them are wrong. If it means anything, it's like they're finding something that shouldn't be there, because it's absurd to think that the real meaning of it is a response to a mistaken interpretation of it. Okay. And so nobody gets it. And the creators say, can you try to figure out the answer? We can't. Okay, now if you go over what happens after this. Now this is very interesting. Around with this whole gem being revealed thing, with the first full moon after a solar eclipse, if this is 2020, that'd be after, around July 5th and after. Okay, we have the revelation of, turns out to be the Antichrist in this video. Now, again, I'm not saying that the Antichrist is some future guy. I believe biblically we have an Antichrist figure in the papacy for over 1,000 years. Okay, and that's based on traditional, historical, biblical, Protestant biblical interpretation. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's focus on this for now. They're looking at this as some sort of an Antichrist figure coming. Maggie was supposed to be this gem. Remember, it's really Maggie, Sherlock, and she was going to bring peace to the world. But Marge says, oh, God would never ask a mother to sacrifice her child for the good of the world. And then she adds, again, like Christ was. In other words, Maggie is sort of representing Christ in the Simpsons episode. And Christ is being taken away from them, from the world and peace. And Homer, after that, Homer says, well, I'll give him Bart. And he gives him Bart. Now, Bart is not representing a Christ figure. When Bart replaces the Christ child, what does he bring with him? Hell and destruction. Immediately the painting on the, turns into a demon and hell and fire. The nuns are afraid. The stained glass window with Christ is shattered and destroyed and replaced with, two, looks like Masonic columns, but with serpents, and a hurricane starts to form behind here, and the ground opens and hell opens up, and here's your hurricane, all this, okay? While Bart sits down here, centered, underneath all this destruction. Okay, so that's what this is about. We have an eclipse, the August 21st, 2017 eclipse, which sets in motion a series of events, which reveals that there's the full moon after an eclipse, a solar eclipse. It doesn't say which one. After a solar eclipse, after she's been looking for some special ring, is going to be the month, or the event that marks the revelation of the gem. And as it turns out, in this episode, that leads to the Antichrist appearing. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and take a quick look. We're looking at June 21st as this eclipse date and as an important date to these people. Now I'm going to look at Operation Blackjack. This was a slideshow that was published in the Telegraph. I forget the name of it. This is the same publication that in World War II, the entertainment section was revealed in crossword puzzles the names of the beaches, code names of the beaches that they stormed in Normandy. And MI5, MI6, whatever it is. The intelligence agency, the British intelligence agency, had to investigate this after the fact. I'm sorry, that slipped my mind. And they investigated this as a case of potential espionage because the entertainment section was revealing things that were hidden. Well, in this slideshow is all about a multi-city nuclear false flag attack perpetrated by the government of the United States and what turns out to be the government of a North American Union that includes Canada, the U.S., Mexico, as well as across the Atlantic, the UK and Ireland. Okay, and so this union is perpetuating a false flag attack in order to roll out martial law, start World War III. They respond with a nuclear strike on Syria, Iran, and China. They haul people off to camps, and all of this. This all happens, and they make people get biometric ID cards, and they vaccinate them, force vaccines, and they insert microchips in them. All this is an Operation Blackjack. Blackjack being, of course, a card game where you win with 21. If you get it, that's the best way to. That's what you want. Your goal is to get 21. Blackjack. Now, if you look, this slideshow has a slide with the here all purchases, businesses, financial transactions across the UNA, this North American Union, U.S., Canada, and so on, must now be supported by presentation of your UNA biometric ID card. UNA oversight has the authority to close businesses that fail to demand sight of the card from all clients and customers. Citizens who fail to carry their card and present it upon demand could face unlimited jail terms. And here's the card, and has this number. This number is hex code. Very easy to find online, a way to do a hex to string converter. And you just type it in there. You can see I typed it in exactly like that. And it converts to, "This is not simply entertainment." Now, if you watched the slideshow for a long time, followed the slideshow long after it was published and kept going back to it like a strange person would, like I did, what I found was a slide that was changed. They edited the slide after years, a year or two. Notice the slide says report. And the street line, of course, is blank, like you'd expect it to be. When they updated it to standby, and they added Morse code here. And the Morse code says, "We're in the pipe." Okay, we're ready for whatever it is. So they've made some preparation between this time and the updated slide, and they moved from a status of report to, "We're on standby, just give us the word, ready to go." Okay, so this is Operation Blackjack. Very interesting slide. Show what is it about? What dates? Okay, there's a lot more slides that mention these dates. I'm just showing a handful, but you have June 20th, prep. It's MI5, not MI6. MI5 report warns government of imminent terrorist attack. So MI5 and Britain is warning people of potential attack. They're clearing the shelves out and so on. June 21st continues this. They elevate the threat level. There's actual preparation going on for the attack. And it's first thing, June 22nd, a.m., the nuclear attacks happen simultaneously in many cities. But this is the first moment at 8:03.20. Okay? So what we have here is a beginning of a nuclear attack associated with the June 21st date. And if you look closely at the slideshow, you can go look it up. It's online still. There's 5 parts. But what you have is a June 21st related, in the area of June 21st, major event that's not simply entertainment, that matches almost perfectly, identically, with what you'd expect if IPEC 02 were to take place. The events in there, and your big world war and all that. And at the end, the slideshow basically ends with all hell breaks loose. Somebody's been discovered. The biggest lie in the history of the world is a false flag. Nuclear attack. Cops seize nuke bound for Boston. It's made in the UNA. It's a false flag. But look at the date. Tuesday, June 21st. Now that was 2011. This was created before then even. Okay, but no, again, June 21st makes an appearance here. Very interesting. Okay, now I'm going to add a little more to this June 21st date intrigue, right? And I'm not just finding, you'll notice, if you're watching this video carefully, you're noticing I'm not looking for like hidden number 21 somewhere, there's a hidden 2 in the way the waves move in the water or something. This is not very well hidden if it's hidden at all. It just takes seeing it. Now I'm going to go and look at Leonard Cohen's song, First We Take Manhattan. If you don't know the song, you should go ahead and take a listen to it. It is a song that was released in the 1980s. And the lyrics and video are bizarre. Cohen said in an interview that it is a terrorist song and that he admires some of the things that terrorists do, the way they do it, and this sort of thing. So this is a terrorist song. In the music video, you see all these people carrying briefcases, suitcases, and them too, with what look to be nuclear weapons, almost certainly. And they leave them and they walk away, showing that this is a coordinated attack in different places involving the suitcases being left. Now, if you go to the lyrics, he says he's guided. I'm guided by a signal in the heavens. I'm guided by this birthmark on my skin. I still haven't figured out what that is. The only birthmark that I can think of that's famous enough to mention and would have been known at the time is Gorbachev's, and I've looked at it over and over again. Best I can come up with, it sort of looks like the Korean Peninsula. No clue. I'm not gonna. That's speculation. I have no clue what this is. The birthmark. He says, "I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons." That to me sounds like nuclear weapons. That's more "quote unquote" beautiful than and was like what you'd expect in a suitcase, than a bioweapon, for example. But maybe it's a bioweapon. And he says, "First we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin." He sings. Okay. Now Berlin is not just the city Berlin. Almost certainly. This is emphasis. He says, first we take Manhattan, and then the goal is Berlin. Now, the most famous speech of the Cold War era was a Kennedy speech in 1963, in which he said, the whole free world, all people in the free world are Berliners. And he said, I'm proud to say that I am a Berliner. He said that in German. Okay, and this is a very famous speech, the most famous speech against communism. And so this is him saying the exact opposite. We're going after the whole free world. A terrorist song. Manhattan first, that was 9/11. Then we take Berlin. Okay, now he's guided by a signal in the heavens. Now, Manhattan was after a solstice eclipse, and here we're headed for another one. But listen to this sentence down at the bottom. He says, I remember me, I used to live for music. Remember me, I brought your groceries in. And then listen, well, it's Father's Day and everybody's wounded. First, we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin. You say, what in the world does Father's Day have to do with this? And if you listen to the song, you're like, what is he talking about? Whole song he sings, and at the very end he says it's Father's Day and everybody's wounded. What's the point? Look closely. This here is U.S. Father's Days. Okay? Most of the time they happen on other days of June. In 2020, June 21st is Father's Day. This year is a June 21st Father's Day with a solar eclipse. Okay? That doesn't happen often. The other years of the June 21st eclipses, remember there's 4 of them, each separated by 19 years. Okay? 1982, Father's Day was June 20th. 2001, Father's Day was June 17th. 2039, Father's Day will be June 19th. Not the solstice date, not the date of the eclipse. There is one time, and one time only, when you will have in this whole period, that you will have the signal in the heavens and Father's Day matching perfectly, and that's 2020, June 21st. So this song, this author-described terrorist song about taking Manhattan, then Berlin, whoops, I just clicked it wrong, says that this signal is associated with Father's Day, okay, when we take Berlin, I think, as I understand it. And when you hear the lyrics, it's not just first we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin. It's first we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin. It's the goal is clearly Berlin. That's the big one. Okay. Let's see. Where are we at next? Oh, yeah. Here's the Kennedy speech, right? I do not know how to pronounce German very well at all. Ich bin ein Berliner, or something like that. Okay. It was a speech by Kennedy. It was widely regarded as the best-known speech of the Cold War and the most famous anti-communist speech. And in it, Kennedy said, I am a Berliner, and that all people in the free world are Berliners. Okay, and so that's what, and then we take Berlin is all about, looking back to a very famous speech. Okay, so now, what else do we have here? One last thing. This is the cover of the Economist. I'd forgotten about this from 2015, the year So it's the cover from 2015 about what that year is going to be like. I'd forgotten about it until I saw this in a clip in a video by J.K. Bugout. You have the reference to China, panic happening. And when it hits the bottom, what do you get? You have the world, whatever China drops or causes to, whatever that's Chinese, that falls upon the world causes panic. And then after that, you have green light to either ISIS or crisis, which again would suggest that maybe after this coronavirus, which is being blamed, people say it comes from China, Wuhan, is somehow causing this. It is causing panic, and is the sort of the go signal. It's the green light for what's coming next, either a major crisis more generically, which we already see unfolding, or perhaps even an ISIS terrorist attack, which would go back to IPEC 02, which would make a lot of sense, because if you look, not that this is necessarily says ISIS, but that there'd be an ISIS-blamed terrorist attack, maybe with homegrown extremists. Where it is? Here. People look at this and it looks like Mary with Jesus or something, but that's not. It's Isis and Horus. This is Isis holding up a mushroom cloud, okay, and Horus in her lap, dead to be raised. Okay. I'm going from memory there. If my mythology is wrong, somebody can correct me in the comments. No big deal. But I'm quite confident that we have an ISIS representation there. Okay. So now that I've done all of that, this is a really long video, I'm sorry. Now that I've done all of that, let's go on and talk a little bit about the Bible and what it says is going on. Okay, so biblically, I'm going to do this quickly. You have a biblical prophecy when it refers to days is representing a day as a year. Okay, so each day for a year, Ezekiel says. And in Daniel, we know it works that way because the 70 weeks of Daniel only make sense and reveal when Christ would come, when we read them as 490 years. 70 weeks of 7 years is 490 years, and that makes everything work, okay? And so we know that these days are a year. And in Daniel, we have a little horn that comes up out of the fourth beast. So the fourth beast was the Roman Empire. It's the fourth of the major empires in the ancient world. And after it collapses, it splits up into lots of different kingdoms, which are represented as 10 kings, 10 horns on the fourth beast. And then while those horns are there, after the kingdom had divided, up comes a little horn and plucks up 3 other horns. And that begins a 1,260 prophetic day or year period. Okay? This little horn, this little kingdom that's different than the others, comes up and seizes 3 other kingdoms, makes them his, and goes on for 1,260 years to cause problems in the world until finally Christ destroys him. You can read these passages. I'm going to try to move a little quickly here, but you can see a little more about the little horn. And just to show that I'm not, this isn't a stretch to talk about these as 1,260 year periods. This is what almost every major Protestant interpreter in the Reformation and post-Reformation period would have said. Okay, this was a common way of doing this. So a Presbyterian, David Steele, says the period of apostasy from God is fixed to 40 and 2 months. According to the Jewish mode of reckoning, a day for a year, the whole period is 1,260 years. Jonathan Edwards, a Congregationalist, he said, the 1,260 days or years are often in Scripture mentioned as the time of the continuance of Antichrist's reign. John Gill, a Baptist interpreter, very good Baptist interpreter, he says, this 42-month period, during which the 2 witnesses prophesy, must be understood prophetically of so many months of years, and a month with the Chaldeans consisting of 30 days, and a year of 360 days, which account Daniel used, and John after him, 40 and 2 months, reckoning a day for a year, after the prophetic style, makes 1,260 years, which is the exact time of the witnesses prophesying in sackcloth of the churches being hid and nourished in the wilderness, and of the beast's reign, and of the holy city being trodden underfoot. Lutheran Samuel Schmucker says, reckoning a day for, I'm just skipping to the bold, reckoning a year for a day according to the prophetic key by Ezekiel the holy seer are equivalent to 1,260 ordinary years. Isaac Newton, the famous physicist and biblical interpreter, said, she is nourished by the merchants of the earth 3 times of years and a half, or 42 months, or 1,260 days. And in these prophecies, days are put for years. Okay, so this 1,260 year period that begins when the little horn plucks up 3 horns. What is this? What event is that? Okay, here. This is from a textbook, a history textbook, Introduction to Church History. We see in this that the Frankish army in late 754 or early 755, at the head of the Frankish army, Pippin the Great invaded Italy and compelled Aistulf, who was the king of the Lombards, to agree to surrender to the Pope Ravenna and the other recent Lombard conquests. This author mentions Ravenna, the Pentapolis, and then says that Rome was separate. Rome is his own kingdom from the beginning. Actually, Rome was in the possession of the Pope all along. So that's the little horn. It comes up. It's different than the others because he's not an ordinary king. He's a religious, theocratic king. He rises up, and he gets the Exarchate of Ravenna and the Pentapolis. That's 2. But a more thorough history of the period comes from Pavia and Rome, the Lombard monarchy and the papacy in the 8th century, an academic article presented at the American Philosophical Society, Transactions of the American Philosophical Society in 1982. My font is small there, my screenshot. Anyways, he says, listen carefully, the specific territory claimed by Stephen, that's the Pope, must have been the Exarchate of Ravenna, the Pentapolis, Perugia, and the Duchy of Rome. Notice the Duchy of Rome was already his. Okay, so he already had his little horn, and he got 3 others. Ravenna, Exarchate of Ravenna, the Pentapolis, and Perugia. When did this happen? In the other article it said 754 to 755. That's when they first made the conquest, but it was not handed over until, look here. Aistulf and Pavia were able to hold out for several months this time, but finally the beleaguered Lombard asked for terms in the autumn of 756. At that point, Aistulf accepted peace with the papacy and the Franks. He was also made to swear a new oath that he would restore the previously promised territories, the Exarchate, and the rest. By the rest, he means the Pentapolis and Perugia. Okay, so it was in the autumn of 756 that the little horn, Duchy of Rome, this little kingdom of the Pope, plucked up 3 others and acquired the papal states for the first time. So this was the beginning of the papal states, so the states of the church. Okay, now that's important because 1,260 years after that would be the autumn of 2016, which would have been the fall of 2016, which is when you would have expected the ruler to rise to power, come to power, who would be in power for 7 years, right? The first 3.5 years of which you would have relatively ordinary times as he prepares his final destruction. The second 3.5 years of which he causes the sacrifice and oblation to cease. That's the worship of God. And the 2 witnesses, the church, the people of God who are the witnesses for God, are going to be silenced. Okay? They'll be silenced. The worship of God will be stopped midway through, 3.5 years after he comes to power. Now, if he came to power, if this was in the autumn of 2016, 3.5 years later would be the spring of 2020, which is when the church would be silenced, would be emptied. And if you look closely at what's been happening with the coronavirus, we're seeing the church empty. Okay, it's being emptied right now. And they're getting to the point to where they're about to forcibly close churches. They're already sending police to churches to say, don't meet because of the virus. This is in preparation for whatever big events are coming here soon. The church is going to be out of the way, practically speaking. Assembly is going to be out of the way. And whatever big events happen in the second 3.5 years of this 7-year period, from the middle of this year through the end of 2023, about 2024, we're going to have, I think, calamity after calamity after calamity. Of course, I could be mistaken. I could, maybe this, the 3 horns that he plucked up, maybe the start date wasn't 756. Maybe it was 2 horns and a 3rd horn came along later. But it looks like 3. it's Exarchate, Pentapolis, and Perugia. Or maybe there's a really interesting interpretation that says that the 1,260 years had to begin closer to the year 800. And it's hard to explain that right now quickly because I've already gone almost an hour. But I think that's an interesting interpretation. I disagree with it. But the reason they think that is because that's when the Pope crowned Charlemagne the Holy Roman Emperor. And so they think, these interpreters think, that either an empire was necessary to get this 1,260 years started, the 60 years started, or the Pope giving authority to the civil beast was necessary. But the Pope was already crowning civil rulers or giving authority to them back in, I think, 752, so right around the same time as 756. So I think that we don't need to be looking to 800. And that's, in fact, why I moved out of the United States years ago in anticipation of the year 2016. And I wrote a book on the subject that I published in 2011. Either way. So what we have here, what we're watching unfold right now, is, I think, the fulfillment of this prophecy of 1,260 years ending. The church is being gradually and almost voluntarily, without a fight, silenced throughout the entire world. And it's right on schedule, 3.5 years after the fall of 2016, when it looks like it probably was Trump, when Trump came to power. When he was elected in November. So we are witnessing this possibly, and so that would suggest that the coronavirus is just the beginning of, it's laying the foundation for a lot of trouble to come. It's putting the people in the lockdown state in preparation for a lot of horrible events to unfold one after another for the next few years. So be ready, pray a lot, watch and pray. Okay, and that should be the end of my video. And I really do hope you all liked it in the sense that you understood it and grasped it. Of course, it's bad news if it's right, but don't get caught up on specific dates, like to the day. I mean, I think it's clear enough from what we've seen that the eclipse on June 21st, the buck moon a couple weeks later, these events are important in the planning of these really weird people who worry about signs in the heavens and stuff. But it doesn't mean that events will take place specifically on those dates necessarily. Maybe a little bit after, maybe a little before, maybe months after, like in 2001 when the September 11th attack happened, 3 months roughly after the June eclipse. Okay, so there you go. I hope this helped. Take care.